There's this one concept that somehow connects the quiet death of a distant star to the mess piling up in your bedroom. It's called entropy. And depending on who you ask, it's either the universe's ultimate law, a kind of social sickness, or, well, a philosophical trump card. So today, let's dive in and try to figure out what it is and what it might mean for pretty much everything.
This quote, man, it just nails the feeling of entropy, doesn't it? It gets right to this universal, totally unavoidable slide towards decay and disorder. Before we even get into the science, just think about that idea for a second. That the very act of creation is also the first step towards its own end. That's really the heart of what we're digging into today.
Okay, so let's start big, and I mean really, really big. If entropy is this universal law, then what does it have to say about the final fate of the entire universe? Well, the answer is this: huge, kind of chilling concept called the heat death.
Now, first off, heat death is a kind of misleading name, right? It doesn't mean the universe gets super hot. It actually means it reaches a state of perfect, boring equilibrium. There are no more temperature differences, no more energy flowing from one place to another, which means no more work can be done. It's a universe where all the energy is perfectly spread out, making it completely and utterly useless. Everything just stops.
And look, this isn't just some wild guess they pulled out of thin air. This whole theory comes directly from one of the most fundamental rules in all of physics, something scientists like Lord Kelvin started figuring out way back in the 1850s. They saw that in any closed system, energy just naturally spreads out, and order inevitably breaks down into disorder. And really, what's the universe if not the ultimate closed system?
And the timeline for all this? I mean, it's just staggering. We're not talking billions of years here. We're talking timescales so huge they pretty much break your brain. After the last stars finally wink out, the universe goes into this so-called dark era, where the only things left are black holes. And even they slowly evaporate over literally googles of years. It's the longest, slowest goodbye you can possibly imagine.
And this comes straight from the man himself. Lord Kelvin saw this as the only logical conclusion. The universe was like a giant clock that was slowly winding down, just ticking towards a final, silent stop.
So, okay, that's the cosmic scale, and it's fascinating, right? But it kind of forces you to look closer to home. If the entire universe is trending towards disorder, what does that mean for our own incredibly complex societies? Can we actually use this law of physics to understand our own civilizations? Well, this is where the whole idea takes a really surprising turn.
And this is where things get really interesting, because the idea of entropy makes this huge leap from the world of physics right into sociology. Some people have taken this concept of universal decay and used it as a metaphor for what goes wrong inside human societies. But the big question is that a fair comparison?
Now, this is a really important distinction. These scholars are basically saying, whoa, hold on. Social entropy isn't some law of nature that we're helpless against. No, they argue it's a product of our own choices, our own behaviors, and the systems we decide to build. It's something we create, not something physics forces on us.
And when you put them side by side, the difference is night and day, right? On one side, you have this inevitable physical process. It's just about energy and matter. But on the other, you have this social thing, rooted in human actions, things like injustice and the breakdown of trust. One is about physics. The other is about us.
So how does this actually play out? Well, this research lays out a model with two forces pushing against each other. On one side, you've got the pillars of social order, or low entropy, things like self-respect, freedom, democracy. These are the things that build up complex, stable societies. And working against them, you have the drivers of social decay, or high entropy, things like discrimination, inequality, and corruption. These things don't just happen. They actively tear down the trust that holds a society together.
And what this all boils down to is a really powerful idea. Unlike the heat death of the universe, social decay isn't something we just have to accept. It suggests that a healthy, fair society is one that is actively fighting its own social entropy by pushing back against these corrosive forces. It's not inevitable. It's a choice. All right, so we've gone from the cosmic scale all the way down to the social one. Now let's bring it to the most personal level there is. You and me. Because for some philosophers, the cold, hard reality of cosmic entropy poses a massive challenge to the very idea of meaning itself. And this question, man, it cuts right to the bone. If we, the creatures who invent and feel and assign value to things, are only here for a little while, and if everything we build and love is also temporary,
then what does that value even mean in the grand cosmic scheme of things? So, this is the basic idea behind the nihilist's take on entropy. It says that when you're faced with universal inevitable decay, everything we do, our struggles, our art, our love, our whole inner world, it all ultimately adds up to nothing. It's a really tough pill to swallow.
But you know, this feeling isn't new. Not by a long shot. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca was wrestling with this exact same thing thousands of years ago, long before we had a fancy scientific name for it. The feeling of impermanence is timeless.
So let's really unpack this argument piece by piece. First, it says our creations, right? Every painting, every skyscraper will one day turn to dust. Then, our actions. They fade away the second we do them. But the real gut punch is about us. The very mind that creates and holds our values, the thing that gives the world meaning, is temporary. And when we die, that entire universe of meaning just vanishes.
So, where does all this leave us? We've seen entropy as this cosmic destiny, as a kind of social disease, and as a huge philosophical challenge. 3 completely different ways of looking at a single scientific law. When you think about it, we've looked at this one word, entropy, through 3 completely different lenses. We started with the hard science, a physical law about the universe. Then we saw it used as this powerful metaphor for the health of our societies. And finally, we've used it as a philosophical tool, one that kind of forces us to confront our own mortality and what our lives are all about. But maybe, just maybe, nihilism isn't the only way to look at this. Seneca offers a different path. Instead of despairing, maybe there's a strange kind of comfort in our shared fate. We aren't separate from all this cosmic stuff. We are a part of it. We're being swept along in the same great cosmic river as the stars themselves. And that leaves us with one final big question to chew on. Is entropy just a cold, hard fact of physics, the ultimate truth about how it all ends? Or has it become something more? A powerful story, maybe a modern myth that we use to try and understand our place in the cosmos, our societies, and ultimately ourselves?